Hello everybody, my name is Tina and welcome to the G-Sport Hub. This is not just our first video in 2024, but our first video after our 1-year anniversary. Since I made G-Sport Hub at the beginning of 2023, a lot of things have happened, and let's talk about LJL here. And in particular with LJL, a lot of bad things happened as well last year. Obviously the biggest news is the PCS merger. If you want to know more about exactly what happened, then watch my video at the end of LJL. And because of the esports climate we are in, not just in Japan but globally, we had to say goodbye to two of our teams, Fennel and CJ, who technically left but merged with AXIZ. That's why this new team is called AXIZ CREST. That means now we have 2 less teams, which means like 10 less spots. We have seen a lot of retirements. I really don't want to leave out anyone, it's just there were so many. Can't list them all, but people like Hachimacha, people like Megumin, people like Once, people like Loken, people like Anti. So many retirements this off-season. But all of this was just the bad, and I don't want to start 2024 on a negative note. So let's talk about some of the positives I think that this whole new thing can give us. First of all, well, we don't know too much details about it. We know that in some ways LJL Academy will be unified with PCS Academy. It was somewhat confirmed by the product manager of the PCS, saying that later on we're gonna get more information. So it's obviously gonna be a bigger playing field, a better competition for new players coming up in the system. It is a good change, I think. It's definitely a good change considering that LJL Academy has been somewhat of a downturn in recent years. It didn't really get much hype, and last year only the finals was streamed. So I think having a part of this bigger academy ecosystem, which by the way it's not just academy, because as far as I know even amateur teams will have a chance to qualify in kind of an open qualifying way. So it's gonna be a really robust system, and I think it's very great that LJL is gonna be a part next year. And once again, because LJL is now part of the PCS, or in more broad terms the APAC, if you recall, the whole news about the merger was from an APAC meeting, even though obviously Korea and China is never gonna merge into the PCS, I think. Still, it's looking more and more like that this is one entity, and that's why happened the Champions Queue. Yes, we got our own Champions Queue. And if you're curious what happened here in the G-Sport Hub, we already made some highlight videos, some TikToks. It's just some funny moments, and also because there were a lot of languages present, I think it was really fun. It was a really fun experience to watch. There are highlights. Go ahead and watch after this video. Okay, this intro is definitely longer than I wanted it to be. LJL. Let's talk about LJL. In this PCS ecosystem, 3 teams go to the PCS Playoffs and 3 teams stays in Japan. Who are these teams are gonna be? I think I'm not gonna say too much of a surprise when I reveal my top 3, but let's start first of all in the bottom 6th place, Burning Core, or as they call now, Burning Core Toyama, from their home city. So it's worth to note that at the time of recording this video, Burning Core hasn't announced their roster yet. So let's hope that you already know that the Burning Core roster is Totsu in the top lane. Yes, Totsu is gonna return to LJL. L stays in the jungle. Then we have some new members, namely Jewel coming over from Dark Passage, who by the way last year he played with Binny, V3's new AD carry, and the year before, same on Dark Passage, he played with Tana, V3's new top laner. So it's gonna be really funny how Jewel is gonna have this rivalry with V3. And then we have the botlane duo from SAG Academy, Howla and Charlie, coming up straight from winning LJL Academy, by the way. Finally, coach, and trust me, it was shocking for me as well when I first heard it, Raina. So yeah, when I first heard it like a few weeks ago that this is gonna be Burning Core's team, my first reaction was, what? It's a very rookie team. Like obviously Totsu has played with DFM, but we all know what happened there. I mean, several hours of videos about the topic. I would count him as still a rookie-ish player. And they have Hola and Charlie, who are really great prospects. I have really high hopes for them. So I 100% think that they should deserve an LJL spot. But then you have Raina as a coach? At the time of recording this video, he hasn't even announced either stepping away or retiring from professional playing. It was so shocking and not necessarily in a good way. That's why I put them 6th, if I'm being honest. Don't get me wrong, I think the players here are great prospects, but prospects need fostering, and I don't see how this team would do that. I just don't see how they could improve from being rookies to being great ventured players. I really wish for this team to find their style and improve and punch above their weight, but how many games are they gonna play? Like 10 best of 3s maybe in the regular season. I'm sorry, I would be happy to be wrong, but I think Beast is gonna be on the 6th position. And that leaves us to the 5th place in my power rankings. For some people, it may be shocking, but yeah, it is V3. I don't think VC is gonna be lost this time around. I think they're gonna be 5th. It's kind of weird because I think VC was, other than DFM, our only team who retained most of their roster. They have only 2 new additions, Tana on the top lane and Beanie in the AD carry position, who, by the way, I talked about previously. But at the same time, they are the ones who made the biggest change, because V3 used to be our 5 Japanese player team, and now they are also, just like anyone else, importing 2 Korean players. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know too much about Beanie, but I know a lot about Tana, one of our best top laners last year. So definitely an amazing pickup for them. And also, Tana speaks fluent Japanese. I don't know how Beanie's Japanese is gonna improve over the weeks, but Tana is fluent in Japanese. He can also translate, by the way, inside a game, so I don't think they're gonna have communication issues. I think it's just a solid upgrade for the team overall. Other members of the team stay the same: Hiroki in the jungle, Ace in the mid lane, and Hetel as support. And as for Hiroki, I have become a huge fan of him during this off-season. He has been streaming Champions Queue every single day. He has been grinding it out from the very start to the very end. And we also have a highlights video of him because, by the way, he could shot call in Chinese, because obviously they were playing with PCS players, so they had to find some common language, and Hiroki just started to shot call in Chinese. Why not? And besides the entertaining factor, he has been grinding Champions Queue every single day. So I can imagine these few weeks were an incredible experience for him. As I said before, in the mid lane, it's gonna be Ace still, who is the veteran voice who is gluing together this team, as well as Hetel still staying as a support. I don't know how his synergy is gonna be with Beanie. So while I think they can maybe get close to AXIZ CREST, who, surprise surprise, is gonna be my 4th team, but we're gonna get to them later. But since V3 from the previous seasons have such a faint in name, I really couldn't justify putting them above 5th. And as I mentioned, huge surprise here. I think the 4th place team is gonna be AXIZ CREST, which is gonna be, as I said, a merger from AXIZ and CJ, even though AXIZ owns the LJL team, and even though I'm gonna talk about this, but the team is kind of like CGA. Throughout the years, AXIZ was always the team who was not necessarily having the biggest names. They had a lot of rookie players from time to time, but they always punched above their weight. Maybe it's gonna happen this time around as well. I don't know. They went through a big rebuild from last year. It's gonna be only Aino staying, and he is not even staying as a top laner. No, he's gonna be a support. He had to swap to support last year due to some internal issues, and support is his 2nd role. So don't write him off. He's a good support, but he's gonna stay as a main support from the looks of it. And from directly CJ, they got some nice pickups, even though CJ had quite an interesting ride. But I think from all those moments, it was Kashin for me who always stood out. Even when the team was struggling, he was always finding angles, finding how to turn things around. So I really liked his playstyle. And even if sometimes it didn't work, I think he's still a really good pickup, especially with also from CJ, Yujo is gonna be playing as mid lane for AXIZ CREST. And to just finish off, like I said, it's kind of like a CJ team again. The coach is gonna be Sun from CJ last year. So there's already a lot of synergy here. Let's talk about the new players joining besides them. And one second player who I think, besides casting, should be the focus of this roster is their AD carry, Soul. During Soul's time in Rostco Jester, he became so close to winning the LJL from all the time, only to be stopped by DFM, obviously. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned that Albin is gonna be Washide from V3. And even if Washide is not like the carry type of player like Tana is, I think that's gonna be fine. Washide, Yuji, and Aino has to take somewhat of a background role in this team to let Kashin and Soul carry. And I think that's fine. It's a very well-defined team. I think the team dynamics is gonna work well. I would trust them to somewhat consistently beat B3 and V3, but yeah, there would need just some massive underperformance from the top 3 to break into that playoffs qualifying bracket. And if you are there, let me start talking about our top 3, which 3 teams I think are gonna make it to the playoffs of PCS. So on the 3rd place, it's gonna be Sengoku Gaming. Now hear me out. We are talking about spring here, and in case you have seen the roster of Sengoku Gaming, you may have noticed something weird. So what's with this mid-lane situation here? This is 2021 DFM all over again. So the thing is, Gan, a Korean support, has been in the LJL for years, but in 2022 and 2023 he had to complete his mandatory military service in Korea, so he was away, and he needs one more split to qualify for the LJL residency. Just like with DFM, exactly like with DFM, Sengoku is gonna do the same. For spring, they're gonna play Kakun, a very good Japanese mid laner. I'm gonna talk about him shortly. And if Gan can get his LJL residency for summer, then they're gonna play Jet, the superstar mid laner, in the mid lane. For now though, Kakun is gonna be the one starting for spring. So, what do I think of this roster? First of all, and I think it's very important to say, don't write off Kakun! He is not just a Jet waiting room, he has been one of the very young Japanese prospects. He had a very brief stunt in the LJL before in the CGA, and there was a match that he had to forfeit because he had an exam in high school. He has a long career ahead of him still, and I'm very happy to see him finally getting a full, at least one split. And that split, he couldn't have asked for a bad one. What a framework he has to work in with. Obviously in the top lane there is Kinatsu. I'm super happy to see him here because there were some news he may switch to Valorant. I remember when League of Legends had this like documentary series that he was also featured in. So I think no one comes close to the hype that he has for a few years now. The only problem is that he was always just a tiny bit behind the first place. So if he's keeping this trajectory, getting more experience, and maybe in summer with the full roster with Jet, maybe they can even contend for the LJL first place, I think he's in a good way to become the next big Japanese top laner. Then in the jungle we have Elim, actually a huge name in Korea. Even if he hasn't found that much success in recent years, still he was in T1 and has been playing for many years, so I think the experience he brings in is gonna be massive for this team. He even talked about in one of his recent streams that he felt like losing motivation these past years, but after his time in LA, he felt like he's ready to play again, he's ready to showcase what he's capable of, and that's why he joined one of his friends, Jet, in Sengoku Gaming. And then the bot lane, I think I can call them veteran at this point, with both of them having a lot to prove, as Yuhi has been a very stable AD carry in the LJL, but if I'm being honest, he hasn't really been able to showcase what he's capable of outside of champions like Aphelios. And obviously Gang coming just straight back from military, he had like a few games in LA, didn't go too well, so both of them are ready to prove that they are veterans and they have still got what it takes. And together with Gan's brother Young as coach, who by the way was the coach for the 2021 DFM roster as well, I think this team has a super high ceiling, especially if Jet can play in summer. A lot of room to improve as well, but for now, for spring, I'm gonna put them third. And now, after another small gap, I think there's a little bit of a gap between our top 2 and top 3. Who's gonna be my second place team? DFM! A lot of people has made this mistake before, and I'm gonna make this mistake once again. I'm predicting DFM as second. Yes. So what changed from previous years that still makes me think that DFM finally is not gonna be an LJL? There is a saying in the Japanese community, whichever team has Abby is the team that wins LJL. And as you can see, Abby this time around is not with DFM. So who's the new top laner? It's gonna be Ray Farkey. This is one of the earliest signings of the off-season. I think it was maybe even the first. DFM was very keen on running back the roster from last year, but with a new top laner who is gonna be Ray Farkey. Even though Ray Farkey may not be that well known in the global communities, he is one of the fan favorites in Japan. Especially in the absence of Abby last year, Ray Farkey was contending as the best top laner, and he also has a style to be a fan favorite. He really likes the scary champions. He is the Darius god. He's our little Adam. So they have a lot more flexibility in the top lane. They can now carry 2 top lane. My only problem is I'm not 100% sure that the atmosphere is there. Unfortunately, it's really hard to escape this topic. I think last year was very taxing on the FM. Not just on Totsu, but the whole situation. Yutapon looked super tired at the end of the year, and I can't imagine either of them end the year thinking that this is a good year. So all I can hope is they can just have a full mental reset after everything that happened last year. For example, Harp has been posting a lot of pictures and videos with his girlfriend during these last few months, and none of them were really active on social media, so I just hope that they took this time to absolutely just disconnect, just relax and have a totally fresh start for 2024. So it's definitely a good team just looking at the raw skills, My biggest concern though is just about the atmosphere. I really don't know how they can get back to their pre-drama form. So because of them, I will put them as second, and depending on how much they can reset, how much they can get back the form, that's how much closer they're gonna be to the first place. Because whichever team has Abby is the team that wins LJL. And I have to agree with that in my predictions, because yes, I put as well first place, the team that's gonna win LJL in 2024 Spring Split is SAG, the Fukuoka SoftBank HAWKS Gaming. The Hawks didn't even make that many changes, but my god, the changes they made were so good. They were already super close beating DFM in the finals, it was a 5-game series, so any small upgrade would put them theoretically above DFM, and they immediately went with the biggest changes you can imagine, getting Abby on the top lane. Abby had kind of a middling performance in the LEC, even though he looked better at the end. He had some communication issues, so now that he's back in Japan, he can finally communicate in Japanese again. Even Forrest is learning Japanese. He was dueling with Abby in the Champions Queue, and he had a fine Japanese. Forrest is another ex-T1 jungler. He has been in LCK CL for years, and he's finally getting his chance to prove himself in a tier 1 league. He definitely has high expectations being in our super team with Abby, but he has trained in T1 for years, so I think that should be good. He was known to be an extremely inconsistent player in the LCK CL, with both super high highs, but also super low lows. It was even a meme in the Korean community that whenever he makes the play, he rolls the dice, and if it's a 1, it's gonna be a bad play, it's gonna be a 6, it's gonna be a good play. The meme is that it's not like he has good games or bad games, he has good plays and bad plays, so he was just inconsistent even in a single match. But maybe being this super young and aggressive jungle is exactly what SAG needs, with having a veteran top lane in Abby, and having the mid laner Dasher, he's back for another year. Please! I want Dasher to finally win an LJL trophy. This guy had been a monster for years without an LJL trophy, because it was Abby most of the time who took it away from him. Now they're in the same team, so trophy, it means trophy. And with these veteran solo laners, obviously we have our bot lane, another super young bot lane, same as last year with Marble and Vista. Marble is our golden rookie, even if he hasn't really always been able to showcase this super aggressive style, because Vista is one of our most aggressive supports in LJL. He was the one who was playing a lot of Velvet support during last year. So putting everything together, I think SAG is gonna be one of our most aggressive teams, and if we look at the skills each player has, I think it's a no-brainer putting them at first. Oh, and by the way, have I talked about their coach pickup? They now have Vikel, who used to be Fennel's coach. Fennel, who was not necessarily a super team on paper, but they were always able to stay competitive with the top teams. And Vikel was able to bring this own unique personality into the team. So SAG just, I think, have every single piece right this season. Even if I say that I think our top 3 is gonna be SAG, DFM, and Sengoku, I know, hot take. What about then? What about the PCS? LJL doesn't only exist as a single entity anymore. Our top 3 teams after being in LJL has to go to the PCS Playoffs if they want to get to MSI and Worlds. How well they're gonna do? What is the situation with PCS? Look, I'm only being introduced to the PCS scene right now. I'm definitely not an expert there. Thankfully though, I did bring some actual experts to talk about the PCS and how the LJL fits there. First of all, it's gonna be Meander, PCS co-streamer, super fan, expert, everything about the PCS Meander knows about. And second of all, we have the one and only Kevin Miller from CFO, so we're gonna have some insight how from the inside PCS teams looking at the LJL and the merger. Guys, take it away.
Hello LJL fans, I am Meander, creator of the Underdogs podcast and a big PCS maniac. When it comes to the PCS teams this year, we can divide them into 4 tiers. The first one I'm going to talk about is Hell Picks. Hell Picks are a big favorite to end up last in the Layeros prison. not advancing into playoffs, and therefore, as LJL fans, you do not care about them. The next tier is Esports Gaming and West Point Esports. Those are the teams that are likely going to fight for the last spot in playoffs. These teams are comprised of relatively young players who are just simply weaker as a 5-man unit than the rest of the top 5 squad. When it comes to the matchups against LJL and even Oceanic teams, these teams may not even be favored in a matchup in playoffs. These are the teams that are definitely in the range of LJL, and I expect them to drop off pretty quickly in the playoffs bracket. The next tier is going to be J-Team, Frank Esports and Beyond Gaming. Those are the teams that have some flaws but definitely will give some trouble to the stronger LJL teams. You have the names such as Hanabi, Kongyue, Jimian, Kaiwing, Husha and Driver. Those are players who are really good when it comes to the PCS scene, and they have shown some very good international performances. But there is an angle where SoftBank HAWKS possibly beats them and even advances into that top 3 finish in the PCS playoffs. When it comes to the next tier, there is PSG Talon and CTBC Flying Oyster. Those teams are basically untouchable, with players like Maple, Rest, Gory, Karsa, Junjia. Those are the players which are simply said just better than pretty much every LJL player, thus the firepower is simply too strong. I do predict that the best finish for LJL with a good bracket, with good seeding and with good LJL performances. I think that the top seed definitely can reach that top 3 finish. I would anticipate the second seed to maybe end up in that 4 to 6 threshold, and for the third seed I would expect them to drop relatively quickly or maybe snatch a win against Deep Cross Gaming or West Point Esports, depending who is the 6th PCS seed.
So, I think the top 6 power rankings will probably be CFO first, obviously, PSG will probably be second, and I think the 4th to 6th place can be BYG, FAK, J-Team, and DCG in 6th place. I think the top 2 in PCS is really strong, and I think there's a middle, 3rd, 4th that's really good, but I think it starts to fall off with 5th and 6th, specifically 6th place DCG. I don't think they will be really good, and I think LJL should have a decent chance at replacing our 4th to 5th, 6th place teams. I think the top 3 in LJL will be SHG first, then DFM, and then Sengoku 3rd. I think SHG, SoftBank HAWKS Gaming, they can probably make 3rd at best. I don't think they'll break into top 2, but I think that they'll be 3rd. At worst case, I can see them being 4th place, but if they get 5th or 6th, I think that'll be a shock for me included, and including everyone else that is watching the LJL. I think the LJL joining is great. I think it makes the competition better. I was a huge fan of the International Wildcard Championships. You'd have kind of mini worlds with all the wildcard teams. You got to see which wildcard team was the best, which one was the worst. And this is kind of bringing it back, where it's just you're only having wildcard teams. You're kind of making a small mini tournament. And I think that it'll help bring up the level of competition. I think the best of 5 matches will be way more interesting. Because in the past, PCS definitely from 7th, 8th, 10th, or 9th, 10th teams, they weren't that good. I think replacing them with top 3 from the LJL is going to be a huge improvement, and will make all the best of 5 matches, best of 3 matches more exciting.
Thank you very much. Another year is going to have new challenges, another year is going to have new opportunities, and here at the G Sport Hub we are here to cover all of them. The LJL spring season is going to start January 20th. We don't have information about the format and how exactly it's going to go out. Whenever we have, it's going to be on the G Sport Hub Twitter and Threads. I think, yeah, we're still on Threads. Yeah. At G Sport Hub on anywhere, any kind of platform. And as soon as the LJL starts, we're going to have interview translations, we're going to have summaries, we're going to have playoff check eventually, maybe we're going to have regular season check, maybe we're going to have PCS check, because whatever happens to the PCS is also going to be relevant for the LJL, and what happens in the LJL is also going to be relevant for the PCS. So it's going to be a very exciting season, I think. I know these changes are not necessarily all great. I know these have a bad side as well. I know the current climate is not necessarily the best. But I, the G Sport Hub, and every fan, I think we can only do one thing, and that is support the players, support the teams, and enjoy what we have. I was Tina with the G Sport Hub, and bye for now.